Hey everyone, I hope this belongs here. If not, I'll submit to the correct subreddit. Boring intro. I live in a cabin on about 50 acres of fields and woods with my mom. We've been enjoying a day of sitting on our asses and watching television. However, I had to mow my grandmother's yard this afternoon. I told my mom that I have a yard to mow today, and it went as follows. It's cooler outside. I guess it's a good time to get off my ass. Or you could just call and tell her you'll do that tomorrow. Nah, I'm gonna get my things together and go. Proceeds to grab headphones, e-cig, etc. Juicy part. So, I headed down the driveway, topped the hill. Lo and behold, there were at least 20 MS highway patrols in the middle of my field, about 70 feet from my truck. I had just assumed that our neighbor, who has a history of cutting up, had gotten himself into a huge trouble with the law over drugs or something. When I was pulling out of the gate, I told one of the local cops that I'm the landowner and asked if everything is alright. He said, "It's going to be." Whatever that means. On the way to my grandmother's house, I called my mom and said, "I don't know any other way to put this than there are like 100 cops in our field." She said that she's on the way to check it out. I called her a few times with no answer, assuming that she's talking to the cops or something. I knew she'd be safe with all those cops, so I went ahead and started mowing the grass. Plus, my grandmother's only a couple of miles down the road. When I was about halfway done mowing, she called me saying that the troopers had nothing to say, but one of the local cops that we know said that it was this guy wanted in Texas for shooting 3 people, killing 2, and injuring 1. The guy drove into our field and shot himself after being confronted and surrounded by troopers. When I was done mowing, I headed home to pick her up, and we drove back to talk to the last few troopers. I told them that I'm the property owner and asked if it was all clear and if everything's safe now. They said that they had just moved the body and car out, so it's clear. Wow, all the way from Texas, huh? Well, be safe. Thanks, I said. We drove over to the site after the troopers left. Right behind our old pecan tree were a bunch of tire treads and a giant bloody spot in the grass. We're still in a state of what the fuck. Going by the press conference we just watched as I was typing this guy shot himself as I was going up the driveway. I didn't even hear the gunshot or sirens, but I remember having my radio turned up. So, Randall Lee Burroughs? I'm glad we didn't meet. TLDR. Guy from Texas who was wanted for double homicide offed himself less than 100 yards from our very isolated cabin in the woods. While I was headed to cut the grass at my grandmother's house, he could have possibly taken me and my mother hostage. P.S. Somehow this guy can find my field, but FedEx can't. So this is something that happened a few years ago. I didn't consider sharing it, but I have been listening to stories on Let's Not Meet for a year or two, and finally decided it might be worth bringing up. I used to work at a hotel, and I use the word loosely. It was more of an inn that was in a sleepy beach town in Southern California, but it had plans to be part of someone's chain hotels or something. The property was very small, but in a seriously idealistic location, so it was close enough to the water to be expensive, but not big enough to have more than one front desk employee working at a time. My sister and I worked there together, and we shared one manager, aside from the housekeeping, but they got to leave a lot sooner than the unfortunate front desk who worked nights. I used to work mornings, which is a lot more hectic considering checkouts at this particular property were tough. Plus, we didn't have a lot of things like dishwashers, so we had to wash everything by hand. My sister worked the nights and I took the mornings, but I didn't mind the extra work, only because I didn't feel safe in the hotel at night. The area didn't have a lot of crime, it's just something about the way the front desk area looked. We had the front desk, and in front of it would be the breakfast area. It had tons of windows. It was more window than wall, and you could easily see out into the ocean and into the garden, as well as the stairs that came up into the lobby. In the daytime, it was really charming. But at night, it felt always unsettling to me, especially since if you worked the night shift, you had to stay till 11 p.m. at night without even closing the front door. Now again, this wouldn't be a big deal, but we had no security, no cameras, not even the housekeeping. It was just you by yourself, with this black void to look out to, while you counted down your hours until you could go home. One night, I had been stuck with the night shift, covering for my sister. I didn't have my uniform or anything. It was kind of unexpected. For whatever reason, I decided to close the lobby door, and I'm glad I had. The door wasn't locked, so any late-night customer could come in, but none did that night. It had finally turned 11, and I was super relieved to get off. I began my end-of-shift duties, rolling the day, setting up for breakfast, etc. When I had finished everything, I had grabbed my keys and turned to turn off the lights before leaving, when the phone rang. My gut tensed for a second, only because it was so loud, and I was surprised. We were supposed to forward the calls to our manager's phone, in case someone got locked out of their room and we had to come down and help them. No electric plastic keys used here, ladies and gents. Old-fashioned metal keys for everyone. I pretty quickly calmed myself down, because I was more annoyed than anything, and stepped around the desk to answer the phone. I gave the, "Thank you for calling, this is, how can I help you?" as best as I could for being annoyed, that is. At first there was nothing. No one said anything. I said hello and asked if anyone was there. I thought it was a dead call or a butt dial, but I could hear the ocean on the other side. It was a particularly windy night, so the waves were louder than usual. I then just hung up. When I went to leave again, the phone rang a second time, and I picked up, gave the same line, and I finally got a response. "Is there any rooms available?" He didn't sound drunk. If anything, he sounded collected. The place was next to a bar, so if it was just some drunk dude, I would have known. He sounded calm. Like, unnervingly calm. "Oh, I'm sorry, sir, we're closing for the night," I responded. It's not uncommon for someone to find our hotel on like some Priceline type thing and try to get us to give them a lower price over the phone. What he continued to say, however, really scared me. And I don't scare easy. "Oh, so none are available?" "No, we're closing." "What about the one you're standing in front of?" I immediately froze. See, how the lobby is set up is that there's a door also behind the counter, and that door leads to another room that is directly behind the lobby. We're not allowed to close that one either, but I left it open in case anyone needed help. All of the rooms are outside, like it's not within a contained space. All the halls that lead to other rooms and staircases are outside, so anyone can just walk up and walk around the hotel without being a guest or an employee. So quite literally, anyone can just come off the street and be anywhere in the hotel. It's one of the reasons why I left. I turned and closed the door behind me, locking it, and the front door was already closed as well. "No, sir, we're all booked up. If there's anything you need, you'll have to call back in the morning." I was noticeably more scared now. I think my voice even cracked. I was going to hang up before he had said something else. "I like your tiger," in the creepiest, most slithering voice I think I ever heard. As I said before, I wasn't wearing my uniform that day. I had a gray shirt that this rainbow paint splatter type tiger face on the front. I stared out into the windows before it really hit me. The lights inside the lobby lit it up, so you could see inside of it, while from being inside, you just saw nothing but blackness. He was outside of the lobby, probably most likely staring in through the glass. I didn't get to say anything before he asked, "Is the front door locked?" I threw the phone out of my hand and ran around the desk, locking the deadbolt on the front door. I began to, what I assume was, have a panic attack. I was crying and freaking out. I had never been so scared at one time, in a really long time. Then banging came from the door, really aggressive and angry banging. I was too afraid to grab the phone that I had thrown. It had been flung across towards the windows. I didn't know if he was going to break one of them or not. So I grabbed my cell phone and locked myself into the bathroom that was right next to our desk. I called my aunt, who lived less than a mile away. I know I should have called the police, but I was really young at the time, and I was out of my mind. And she was a black belt, so I knew she could defend herself. I called her and barely was able to tell her what was happening between my crying and freaked out breathing. Normally, this shouldn't have scared me so bad, but I've dealt with stalkery type stuff before, and it felt the exact same way as it did before. Nightmarish. It wasn't until she called me again and told me she was outside the lobby and that it was locked that I had left the bathroom. I know I made a mistake by not calling the police, because he wasn't there anymore by the time she had gotten to the door. So I have no idea what he looks like, and our policy of never keeping the door closed didn't change, even after I had reported to the owners what happened. I've had some issues with safety after that, but none as scary as this one. If it was some drunk, it would have been fine. He sounded like he fully knew what he wanted to do, whatever it was. After that, I didn't work night shifts anymore. So whoever talked to me, let's not meet.